Pedro Malito. Pedro Malito was a well-known rascal. He was known all over the land as a person to watch out for. He had never done a day's work in his life. Pedro Malito would beg, he would borrow, he would trick, he would cheat. Sometimes he would even steal. But work, ni pensarlo. Don't even think about that. It seemed like nothing could make Pedro Malito change his ways. But something did make him change his ways. Pedro Malito fell in love. It happened at the wedding of his cousin Eugenio. Friends and relatives came for miles and miles around for the wedding, and the pile of wedding presents was higher than the groom's head. There was nothing like the sight of seeing someone get something for nothing to soften Pedro's heart and to set the wheels of his mind in motion. The dancing and the celebrating lasted all night long. And when Pedro was dancing with the cousin of the bride, her name was Isabel, he decided that he was in love. By the end of the night, he had asked her to marry him. Now, Pedro Malito was shiftless and he was lazy, but he was a rather good-looking man, and like many fast-talking men, he was a good dancer. So she told him she would think about it. When Pedro went to get her decision, she told him that if he would change his ways and start to work like any other man did, then she would marry him. He swore that from that day on, he would make a living by hard work, like any respectable man. Well, if Pedro danced well at his cousin's wedding, he danced even better at his own wedding, especially every time he swung Isabel past a pile of wedding presents. Ooh, he was right. They received enough for them to live at their ease for 5 or 6, maybe even 7 months. But you know how fast the months go rolling by. And it wasn't very long before Isabel told him that if he didn't start working, she was going to go back home to her family. So Pedro went and borrowed a shovel from one neighbor. He begged a sack of seed corn from another neighbor, and he set out looking for a piece of land that he could farm. Everyone he talked to told him that the only parcel of land anywhere around there that wasn't already being farmed was one that belonged to a big, roaring devil, un diablote gritón. And he had a whole army of little elves and imps and tiny devils. But Pedro said to himself, well, when I was a rascal, I wasn't afraid of man or devil. Why should I be afraid now? He went to that one empty piece of land. He threw the sack of seed corn to the ground, and he set his shovel into the dirt and drove it down. But the first time he lifted a shovel full of dirt, a loud voice called out from down below, ¿Quién anda allí? It was the big old roaring devil. He was saying, who goes there? So Pedro answered him, Soy Pedro Malito. I'm Pedro Malito. I came to plant some corn on this land. Well, the roaring devil knew all about Pedro Malito. In fact, he was a great admirer of Pedro's wily ways. So he called out, "Salgan mis duendes, demonios y diablitos, ayuden a Pedro Malito. Come on out, all of you elves and demons and little devils. Help Pedro Malito plant his corn." A whole army of little imps popped up out of the ground. They grabbed the shovel from Pedro's hand. They dug over here and they dug over there. In 5 minutes, they had turned over all of the field and smoothed out the dirt and planted all of the corn. Pedro ran home to get Isabel and bring her and show her all the work he had done. And then about a week later, he thought he should go check on his field. He borrowed a hoe from a neighbor. With the hoe over his shoulder, he walked off like any good farmer. When he got to the field, he was delighted to see the corn was already as high as his knees. He thought he should soften up the dirt and pile some dirt around the tender corn stalks. So he struck the ground with his hoe, and the voice roared, "¿Quién anda allí?" Pedro answered, "Soy Pedro Malito. He venido a cultivar mi sembrado de maíz." He told him, "It's just me, Pedro Malito, and I came to cultivate my cornfield." And the voice roared, "Salgan mis duendes, demonios y diablitos, ayuden a Pedro Malito." All of the little imps popped up out of the ground. They snatched the hoe away from Pedro, and in 5 minutes they had cultivated all of the soil and pounded soft dirt around the stalks. Pedro went home to get Isabel and show her the work he had done. And then a week later, he went back to look at his field. The corn plants were as high as his waist, but so were the weeds that had grown up among the corn plants. Pedro grabbed one of those weeds and pulled it up by the roots. "¿Quién anda allí?" "It's just me, Pedro Malito. I came to pull up the weeds in my cornfield." "Salgan mis duendes, demonios y diablitos, ayuden a Pedro Malito a deshiervar el sembrado de maíz." All of the imps came popping up out of the ground. They pulled up every single weed in the field, and Pedro Malito ran to get Isabel and show her all of the work. She had never seen such a beautiful cornfield. She was sure that it was going to produce good corn. She started waiting anxiously for a meal of roasted corn. And every week, the little imps would cultivate and weed the cornfield. Every week, Pedro would bring his wife to see the work he had done. Finally, the week came when there were ears of corn on the stalks, and Isabel said, "Oh, some of those ears look like they're ready to be picked. Let's pick a few of them and take them home and roast them for supper tonight." But Pedro said, "No, I think we should wait a little bit longer. Don't worry, by the end of the week, you're going to have all the corn you want to eat." However, the next day, Pedro had gone into the village, and Isabel felt such a powerful urge to eat some roasted corn that she thought, I'm going to go to the field and pick a few ears of corn. I'll roast them and eat them before Pedro gets home. He'll never know the difference. She ran off to the field. She grabbed the fattest ear she could find and yanked it from the cornstalk. And the roaring voice called out, "¿Quién anda allí?" Isabel was frightened. She said, "Soy yo, Isabel, la mujer de Pedro Malito. It's just me, Pedro Malito's wife. I came to pick some ears of corn." And the voice roared, "Salgan mis duendes, demonios y diablitos. Ayuden a la mujer de Pedro Malito." All of the imps came popping up out of the ground. They started tearing all of the ears of corn from the stalks. They pulled the corn plants up by the roots and knocked others to the ground. And poor Isabel stood there covering her eyes and screaming. And in the meantime, Pedro was walking home from the village, and he said to himself, "Oh, maybe Isabel was right. I'll go by the cornfield and pick a few ears of corn. We'll have them for supper tonight." But when he got to his cornfield, he saw corn stalks and leaves and ears of corn and roots scattered in every direction. And poor Isabel stood in the middle of the field crying. She said, "I only came here to pick a few ears of corn. I pulled one ear off a stalk, and then all of a sudden..." She didn't have to say anything more. Pedro knew what had happened. He was so upset, he stomped the ground. He growled, "Oh!" And the roaring voice said, "¿Quién anda allí?" Pedro answered impatiently, "Soy yo, Pedro Malito. ¿Quién más?" "It's me, Pedro Malito. Who else would it be? I'm just stomping the ground and hollering at my wife." And the roaring devil said, "Salgan mis duendes, demonios y diablitos. Ayuden a Pedro Malito a patear la tierra y gritarle a su esposa." Come out, all of you elves and imps and little devils. Help Pedro Malito stomp the ground and holler at his wife. All of those little imps came popping from the ground, and they started stomping and growling at Isabel. She was so frightened that she turned and she ran away from there. She didn't even stop when she passed her family house. She ran until she came to the house of some relatives who lived far, far, far away. And she never came back again. And never again did Pedro Malito do an honest day's work. He would beg, he would borrow, he would trick, he would cheat, he would even steal. But work? Ni pensarlo. Don't even think about that.